Welcome to the Big O Show on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe.
Still the same damn kid from Oklahoma, same old dreams hanging off of my shoulders, wishing and waiting on a shooting star for all to see.
And now your host, straight out of Oklahoma, former Buffalo Bill, Jerry Ostroski.
I'm still the same damn kid from Oklahoma.
Welcome in, everybody. It is now time for the Big O Show. Finally, we've got football. And real quick, before we get into today's show, is we're going to talk about the Arizona Cardinals flying across the country to take on the Buffalo Bills Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern in Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, New York. Real quick information update. We've got torrential downpours, thunderstorms, lightning, and the likes at Arrowhead in Kansas City. So that game has now, the start time has now been moved back to 8:40 Eastern, 7:40 Central. So guess what, folks? You get to check out the whole show. We're fired up. It's a Thursday. It is a football Thursday. And we got our opening game against the Cardinals this weekend. Just give you a real quick update on what's going on. We've got Dr. Brad Bowen coming in. He joins us from Driven Physical Therapy and Performance. We'll talk about the Bills' injury list. It's much smaller than it's used to be. And we're excited about that. But we'll talk to Brad about the injuries. And then we'll bring in my man, Ed Smith. He's coming in to talk about the Arizona Cardinals from the Believe Network, the Believe in Cardinals show. And we'll have him on to talk about the Cardinals. And we'll get into the game and we'll ask him a bunch of questions. But as always, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're trying to get to 2,000 folks. Let's get us there. Hit the like button. There's a lot of people that watch the show that aren't subscribed and they don't hit the like button. Do those two things. And as always, if you're watching on X, you're watching on Facebook Live, hop over to YouTube and get in the comments. And if you got some good stuff, we'll get you up on the show and we'll talk about it. But hey, Sunday opening game of the 2024 season. The Arizona Cardinals are coming into Orchard Park, taking on the Buffalo Bills. Bills are 6.5-point favorites, and the over-under for this game is 47. Think about that, folks, 47. And I kind of like that number. And I kind of like it on the upper end of that 47. But the Cardinals coming in, second-year head coach Jonathan Gannon. And we'll talk to Ed about him a little bit later. Gannon doing some really good things for the Cardinals. Folks, the Cardinals are still in a rebuild. Kyler Murray back now 2 years off of his ACL injury, not running a air raid type offense that he's run ever since middle school. We'll talk to Ed about that and how that all fits in. But this Cardinals team last year, 4-13, 330 points scored. They were 24th in the league, gave up 455 points, and that was 31st in the NFL. Defense still a question mark for those Arizona Cardinals. PFF grades, and here at the Believe Network, if you haven't heard the news, we will carry all the PFF podcasts and vidcasts from here on out, as Overreaction Buffalo is powered by Believe. You can also check us on our website at overreactionbuffalo.com. But PFF grades last season for the Cardinals, overall, they were 31st out of 32 teams, offensively 26th, defensively dead last and 32nd. And then they were 11th in special teams. We'll talk about that a little bit too, because special teams usually play a factor in these early games. So we'll talk about that also. But again, Kyler Murray back 2 years off that ACL injury. Who's he get to throw to, folks? None other than the 4th overall pick this year in the NFL draft out of Ohio State, Marvin Harrison Jr. As Bills fans, you definitely know his father, Marvin Harrison Sr., as he used to play for the Indianapolis Colts when they were in our division. But Harrison comes on 4th pick overall. Bills last season, 11-6. They scored 451 points. That was 6th in the league. They only gave up 311 overall. That puts them at 4th in the NFL. as far as points allowed. Overall, they were ranked 7th in the league out of 32 teams. Offensively, tied for 7th. Defensively, they were 8th. And we talked about that special teams factor. They were tied for 21st in the league. So maybe not where they want to be or where people expect them to be on special teams. So that's something that we'll keep an eye on. But this game on Saturday, a lot of big matchups going on. And as we get into the season, we'll have film to watch. And, the thing that concerns me about the Buffalo Bills, 3 preseason games, and we talked about this. Joe and I were on the Believe in Cardinals podcast earlier today, talked about some different things. And one of the things we really got into was just how much work are the starters getting in the preseason. Back in the old days, you had 2-a-days. You had 4, sometimes 5 preseason games. And, when you look at this, it's a simple fact of, you just got more work. You were able to do more things. And, when you're looking at nowadays, OTAs, they can't wear helmets half the damn time. They can't touch one another half the time. A coach can't be there half the time. We've got a wide receiver room that's inexperienced. Our quarterback threw 3 passes this preseason. So that's something we'll talk about. How did the Bills over this first, 2, 3, 4 games get that wide receiver room up to speed? Obviously, we got safeties to talk about. DeMar Hamlin gets the start this Sunday. A guy that many felt maybe would not even be on this football team. He's now starting next to Tyler Rapp. Obviously, Mike Edwards is available, and Cole Bishop has been talking. We'll talk to Dr. Brad Bowen in a minute about him and some others when we go over that Buffalo Bills injury report. So there's a lot of matchups across the board that we're going to look at. As the season goes on, we'll get more game tape, get to study that all 22 in depth. But off these limited preseasons, folks, these first games that happen in the NFL, especially even tonight, Chiefs and Ravens, what are you going to see? Not sure. Don't know what we'll see. But you know what? I honestly don't have a problem because it is NFL football, and that's what we're excited about. So right now, let's bring in a good friend, and this will be a weekly fixture on the show. But let's bring in Dr. Brad Bowen from Driven Physical Therapy and Performance. Dr. Bowen, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing well, Jerry. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I am doing good. Let's see if we can fix this real quick. There we go. That's a little different. Let's go one more. All right, there we are. That's what we want to see. As you can see, Dr. Bowen is with Driven Physical Therapy and Performance. Buffalo Bills injury report went from about 20 names down to 5, I believe, and we'll read those off real quick. Bills injury list: Cole Bishop, shoulder, full participant. Quentin Morris, shoulder, full participant. Curtis Samuel with the turf toe. He was a full participant. Defensive end Javon Solomon, oblique muscle, did not participate. And then Mitch Trubisky with the knee was limited. Let's start with Javon Solomon. Real quick, just let our listeners know, when we're talking oblique injuries, what part of the body, what are we talking about?
So we're talking about that muscle on the side of our torso. It kind of moves in a diagonal pattern, and it mostly has to do with bending side to side as well as rotation. So as far as a player like Javon Solomon, who's supposed to be a pass rusher and has to bend corners, it's one of the most important muscles you have to use for that position. So, and for him to not be a participant means he got it pretty good. He's been on the bike, it looked like, the last couple of days in practice.
Brad, when you start talking about obliques, I mean, when I don't want to say it, I'd stop myself. And by the way, it could be a drinking game when guys that played in the league use the term "when I played" or back in the old days. But you busted up a finger, you put on a brace, you tweaked an MCL, and we'll talk about Trubisky in a moment. You put on a brace. Really, not much you can do with an oblique. Am I correct?
You're correct. Until that sucker's healed, he's going to have to ride it out. There, you can't brace it up. You have to use it for everything you do, from lifting in the weight room to riding a bike to hitting an offensive tackle at full speed. And your core is your foundation as a player. So if you don't have that, it's tough to go out there and do much of anything.
When you start talking oblique injuries, is this something that's probably, even if it does heal up enough that we can get Solomon on the field, is this a pretty much a full season thing where it's going to nag him for the entire season? Or are these some things you can get healed up pretty well to where they're not bothering you? And the other question to that, and the other part of that, second part of that question is, we're not talking any sort of pelvic girdle stuff when we talk about obliques. Am I correct?
The obliques are inserting all the way down into the pelvis, so it depends exactly where the injury is for him. I would say most of the time injuries like this kind of occur in the muscle belly, so kind of somewhere between your rib cage and your pelvis. And then the second follow up to that question being, how long term is this going to be? Hopefully it's a quick, couple of weeks and he's back on the field. But with the position that he plays, he is at risk of re-injuring this again. So I'll be interested to see if they, change which side of the ball he's on, which way he's rotating. He might have a comfort thing when he comes back onto the field. I think those are things to pay attention to in practice when he's back out there, and then hopefully when he's game ready as well.
Dr. Brad Bowen joins us from Driven Physical Therapy and Performance there in the South Towns in Buffalo. If you want to, if you got injury needs, you want to rehab some stuff. Heck, if you just want to get better at the sport you play, like me, I play a ton of golf. You can go to a guy like Dr. Brad Bowen, and he can do some things for you to get your golf swing even better and actually prevent you, hopefully, from injuring a back or something of that nature. But we talked at length about Curtis Samuel, and we talked about that turf toe. What are some of the things you can do with a turf toe as far as rehab, as far as tape, modalities, bracing? What are some of the things you do when you have an athlete that comes in that's dealing with a turf toe type injury like Curtis Samuel is, especially a guy that is a receiver? So tons of cutting, tons of planning and rotating and things like that, where you can possibly re-aggravate that injury.
Well, initially we saw in the preseason, they offloaded him, right? They reduced his workload. They kept him off the side. He wasn't sprinting. He wasn't moving around all that much. So offloading is number one. I'm sure they had him doing a whole bunch of foot exercises to help work those muscles back to full strength in the bottom of his foot with whatever he ended up pulling. Because you can do everything from irritate that great toe joint to tearing ligaments to rupturing muscles, depending on the severity of the injury. As far as keeping him healthy and making sure that he doesn't re-aggravate it throughout the season, there's taping techniques that basically kind of create a horseshoe position over the top of the toe and then wrap down to the bottom of the foot. That's the main taping mechanism that most people will use to keep that toe from going into extension as he drives off for a sprint or a cut. The other thing that will be used occasionally as well is like orthotics. Like think of like a carbon fiber shank that goes under the bottom of the foot to the bottom of the big toe, again, to provide extra support and keep that toe from handling all of the load that he's providing when he's pushing off.
So I have to ask you, Brad, when you put, say, that carbon fiber, back in the old days, we had, see, there I am, drinking game, take a drink, back in the old days. We had these metal plates that would be on the end of like an orthotic. So basically you're trying to change the pivot point of the foot. So instead of maybe when that foot rolls forward to the toe, instead of it flexing at the big toe, maybe it flexes back further in the foot.
Yeah, you're just transferring force more to the arch of the foot as opposed to going off that big toe joint. And it's again to offload it and make sure that you're not taking that joint to full extension, which is how it got injured in the first place. Hopefully he's getting back to a point pretty soon here that he can go without that, because as you know, anytime you're adding a brace or anything into a shoe or around a knee or another joint, it becomes uncomfortable at times to play with and changes how you move. So I think you'll be able to tell when he's out there if he has something like that in a shoe, but you certainly won't know if he has it taped or not.
Mitch Trubisky is a guy that a lot of people want to talk about. Is he healthy enough to play? Is he not healthy enough to play? They put him as limited on the injury report this week. You saw him in practice a little bit, kind of knowing body movement and kind of how the body protects itself from certain injuries. What did you see from him in some of those reels that were out there in the media as far as maybe his availability for Sunday afternoon?
He was taking 3-step drops, and he was a little ginger on it. He definitely wasn't going at full speed, but I would be a little surprised to see him on Sunday giving the extent of the injury, kind of how they protected him from the start. He's still wearing kind of that big clunky brace, and while he's jogging on it, he certainly wouldn't be rolling out and taking passes to the flats or throwing the deep ball off that leg. My biggest concern for that knee, they still haven't really come out and said what it was. My guess is still that it was an MCL sprain at this point, is the severity of it. I went back and I watched that Steelers preseason game when he got hit in that left knee, and I think he got hit by a cornerback, a DB coming up to make a play, and it collapsed his knee in enough to certainly injure the MCL. The thing that concerns me the most is how long he's had that brace on at this point, how he's moving with it, and the other structures that can be affected. When you have an MCL sprain, oftentimes it's not the only thing that's affected. You can actually slightly stretch your ACL without tearing it. It can become stretched because it handles a lot of load when that MCL becomes affected, as well as that medial meniscus. So there could be plenty of underlying issues that we don't really know about, but happy to see that he's moving. Wouldn't expect him to be playing on week 1.
Dr. Brad Bowen joins us. He'll join us every week here on the Big O Show. We'll talk about the Bills injury list. Dr. Bowen, real quick, let the people know out there how they can get a hold of you if they've got injuries or they've got somebody in their family that's dealing with some things, young athletes that are trying to get over some chronic stuff. How can they get a hold of you and come see you to help themselves get fixed up?
You can reach me through my website at drivenptperformance.com or give me a call at 716-341-9694.
All right. He's Dr. Brad Bowen. He'll be on every week here on the Big O Show. Brad, we appreciate you, man. We'll check you next week.
Thanks for having me in, Jerry.
All right. That's Dr. Brad Bowen from Driven Physical Therapy and Performance. We're excited to have him on weekly to bring you kind of a little bit of an in-depth look at that Bills injury list and just some of the things they might be dealing with as far as getting their players ready to play that week. Hopefully here in a few minutes, we'll have Ed Smith on with us from Believe in Cardinals. We'll talk a little bit about the Cardinals side of this matchup Sunday afternoon, 1 Eastern, 12 Central, as the Cardinals fly into Buffalo to take on the Buffalo Bills at Highmark Stadium, the season opener for this 2024 NFL season. But real quick, looking at some key matchups of this game before we get to Ed. One of the things I'm looking at in this game, and, you know, you can talk about a bunch of different things. Obviously, many people have concerns about the wide receiver room. I've already seen a lot of stuff up here about Tyler Bass. There's people that have issues with him. Folks, $7 million if you get rid of him. You know, I'm a wrestling fan. I've loved pro wrestling my entire life. I love the great Ric Flair. And as Ric Flair always said, you can like it or not like it, but you better learn to love it. And, you know, you can choose how you want to handle this Tyler Bass situation. He is our kicker for the near and probably imminent future. So the best thing we can do as Bills fans is support him to get him back on track, because I don't think his performance, while players have ebbs and flows and ups and downs, I don't think his performance is necessarily worthy of the criticism. I don't see, you know, he deserves some criticism at the level he's getting. I'm not sure. But some of the key matchups from this week's game, as we talked about earlier, Arizona Cardinals take Marvin Harrison Jr., that 4th overall pick in the NFL draft this year. And when you look at Marvin Harrison and you look at Kyler Murray, how do those two guys have an impact on the Cardinals running game? Okay, the Cardinals will probably come out in some spread sets. They've got Marvin Harrison. Do you double him right off the bat? Or do you go ahead and try to single him up with either Rasul Douglas or Benford and take him away that way? And how will that match up with him getting guys out of the box? Will the Bills be able to play the run with limited guys in the box as well? We'll talk about the Bills front seven versus the Arizona offensive line. I think the Bills got to get that running game going, and that's going to be a big-time matchup. And probably that third matchup I'm looking at is the Arizona defense versus Josh Allen. Can Arizona get pressure on Josh Allen with what they have defensively, a group that was, hey, they weren't very highly ranked last season. They were 32nd on the PFF grades as a defensive unit. But right now, I'm going to bring in my good friend joining the show for the first time from Believe in Cardinals. He is Ed Smith. What's up, Easy?
Jerry, what's going on, man? Good to be on with you, brother.
Man, I appreciate you. I appreciate you spending the time. We're excited. Bills Mafia is excited. We got the Cardinals flying into Orchard Park to take on the Buffalo Bills this Sunday at 1. Bills 6.5-point favorites, over under 47. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills, they go to the playoffs last year. The Cardinals, 4-13, struggling a little bit. They are in a rebuild. And part of that rebuild, and I talked about it a little bit ago, Marvin Harrison Jr., Ed, how's he fitting in with this offense? How has his relationship with Kyler Murray maybe grown this preseason? And have they really had enough time with the limited preseason games to really try to get that rapport that you need between quarterback and star receiver?
Well, the good thing about Marvin Harrison Jr. is, as far as him coming into the league, is he's got that pedigree, bro. I mean, he's, his dad, Hall of Famer. Imagine one of us, having a dad in the league. You got to experience it all, through his eyes as a little child. So he comes into the league, not necessarily, he hasn't proven anything yet. He hasn't experienced it yet, but he's been around it enough where he's been groomed for this from the very beginning. And, getting him at this stage in his career, what he did in college, Ohio State, I think he's coming into a very good situation here with the Cardinals. I wish I could tell you that I had a better feel for what his transition is going to be like, but the honest to God's truth, Jerry, is we haven't seen it because of the lack of preseason play.
Right.
They do the joint practices these days. I didn't myself personally make it out to any of those. So it's all a mystery to this point. The only thing we can go on is the reports we get, how good he looks, how well he's acclimating. And then, like I said, that pedigree, because, he's been around this game a long time. He's been able to, look at it through the lens of, imagine having like his dad helping him with those early steps. This is how I used to watch film. These are the things I used to look at. He's going to have somebody who's going to be able to critique him every step of the way. So, it's going to be a mystery how we incorporate him. As you and I talked earlier, it's going to be one of those things where the first few weeks of the season are going to be a feel-out process, almost like preseason football to a certain degree. But what we're hoping is he gets ramped up fast. Him and Kyler get that relationship going early and often, and it grows. We'd love for those two to be pitching and catching for many years here in the desert.
Obviously, Ed, Buffalo Bills fans, very, very knowledgeable of his dad. Cardinals, or the Colts rather, Indianapolis, used to be in our division back in the day, so they got to see him twice a year. So obviously understand what his dad's all about. I think he's just as good. It'll be interesting on Sunday to see his first live action and just how he does. And the other half of that equation, we talked about Kyler Murray, 2 years off that ACL injury. And, when you see, what do you think we'll see out of Kyler Murray this weekend? Because, when Cliff was there, he's running the air raid again, an offense that I think he ran since middle school. Now he's in more of a pro style of offense. I'm not saying necessarily the air raid's not pro style, but you know what I mean. It's different.
Yeah.
How's his grasp of, running a different offense or running that pro style of offense been? And what should we see from him this Sunday in Orchard Park?
When he was free to come back last year, and as bad as this team was, we finished with the 4-13 record. I was almost against him. I was like, wow, he's come back to a patched up line, offensive line. They've got nothing to prove, nothing to play for. I was almost like, why even bring him back and risking injury, or let him, take the rest of this year off. The fact that they played him, Jerry, I thought in hindsight was brilliant, because he got a chance to, get little, pieces of this offense and run it and play in it last year. So this year isn't like his first taste of it. So what we saw from him last year was great in terms of, one, he got in there, he got to play a little bit. also didn't get hurt, and also, like I said, got a chance to play a little bit in this offense. The question once again is, we saw how he finished last year. We saw nothing in preseason. You can only assume that with more time in it will be to his benefit. So he'll be better this year. You're hoping the offensive line can protect him. You're hoping he doesn't try to leave too much on the plate, meaning his first instinct should be when things are breaking down to get out there and run a little bit. But you and I know when you're coming out those knees and stuff like that sometimes you're a little tentative. So I'm hoping he doesn't feel any need to want to prove everybody right by throwing from the pocket. I hope he goes out there and just does what he's naturally is able to do, meaning when play breaks down around him, he gets out of there, hits that eject button. I do hope that, he does, stay within the confines of the offense. But this is in nobody's imagination, at least mine and anybody who's thinking properly, is this team here a Super Bowl or playoff team? I don't think. They could surprise us, but I just hope that the young talent that they put together, they all start to play together, and we see Kyler be the leader of this team, not just in running the offense, but also with his demeanor and everything on the sidelines. I think that's something we're also going to be keeping an eye on as he moves through this season to start out with.
Ed Smith joins me from the Believe in Cardinals network, and Ed was a former NFL tight end and also a minor league baseball player. He was Bo Jackson before Bo Jackson.
Well, Bo Jackson was Bo Jackson. I was a dude that tried to do a little bit of what Bo tried to do.
Bo knows Ed, is what I'll say. But anyway, we appreciate Ed coming on the Big O Show today and talking about the Cardinals. And when we were on the show, and by the way, I for one hope that Kyler decides to sit in the pocket and be a pocket passer, because in Oklahoma, I've seen him running all over the place for years. We don't need to see that on Sunday. But, we talked a little bit when we were on the show with you earlier. We talked about Jonathan Gannon a touch. And I'll tell you what, man, just tremendous compliments from not only players that are playing for him, but front office people and people related, that are connected to the franchise. What is it about this guy that is so exciting, that has so many people, just a really good vibe about the Cardinals organization and where they're going with Jonathan Gannon as their head coach?
The thing I will say is that dude is a professional, man. We for the last few years prior to him getting here, it was almost like a clown show from time to time, partially because of front office. They turned everything over to Cliff Kingsbury as far as being the head man here. In my opinion, he hadn't improved himself at even the lower level to all of a sudden get this job here with the Cardinals. But because of his relationship with McVay and then the fact that he coached Kyler, it's like, well, he's got to be a natural fit at this level. No, he doesn't. He was, in my opinion, more of a coordinator. Now, he could eventually grow to potentially be a head coach again in this league. But when they gave him this first job, he was in over his skis a little bit. And what happened, it was like, Kyler had no discipline here. It was almost like, a spoiled child running the house, that type of thing. And when Gannon came in, it was almost like, look, I'm going to give everybody a fair shot to prove themselves one way or the other to me. And he set down some laws. And Jerry, when you have accountability within the building, all of a sudden everybody checks themselves a little bit. You don't want to be late for that meeting. You don't want to be eating in meetings and doing. It was so wild west out here under the previous regime that when Gannon came in, he pretty much said, look, I'm not here to bust anybody's chops, but this is how we do things. There's some new rules. Here's how we're going to handle our business on and off the field. And that's carried over, man. And I think that is the thing that some of the players love the most, is that, he's going to give you a fair shot, and he's going to treat you like men, but he also expects of you. And guys don't want to disappoint him. So they get out there and they play hard for him and, will lay it down on the line. I think that's what he's brought, is a sense of stability and accountability within the building.
Ed, real quick, and by the way, if you want to learn more about the Cardinals, our opponent on Sunday, you want to watch some stuff on them, head to the Believe Network. Go to Believe in the Arizona Cardinals. Ed's on with his partner, Javon Adams. They do an awesome job, bring you everything you need to know about the Cardinals. So if you want to learn about who's coming into town on Sunday, go check them out over on the Believe Network. But, looking at this game, this weekend opener in Buffalo, when you look at the Cardinals, what do you think they need to do this Sunday to be successful against the Buffalo Bills?
Well, I hope they turn Kyler loose. That's what they do. Too long we've had more of a horizontal attack over here, and some of that was that air raid, get it up and get it in fast. But it almost seemed like everything was out to the sidelines and short to the sidelines. We have not been a team that's threatened up the field that much at all. So you bring Marvin Harrison Jr. in here. All of a sudden you think we've got a tool that we can use to get over the top of this, whatever defense is in front of us, and also get more power down with our running back. Maybe get Kyler under center more, get James Conner behind him going downhill more so we can get vertical with our running game. That for me, that is the key. If we come out and we're tentative and we're, like I said, throwing the ball from sideline to sideline, not willing to take any chances or anything like that, I don't think we have the firepower to stay in the game with Buffalo. You guys have, big time guns on your side of the field, and we can't afford to be trying to fight you with slingshots and stuff like that. We got to cut it loose a little bit,
Right.
If we come out and we play aggressive, I do think we have a chance. And as we talked earlier, because nobody's playing in the preseason, you don't even know what to expect from any of these players. So, and as you mentioned, until you see Kyler up close and personal, if he's doing that little Minnie Mouse thing out there, you have no idea how fast he is. Maybe he comes out and surprises, some guys who have seen it on tape with the first up close and personal. And maybe, like I said, if we get aggressive, we can get a lead, hold a lead. We surprised Dallas last year.
Yes, sir.
In our 4 wins, one of them was against Dallas. I'm sure they, didn't believe it till it was over, and maybe we can come out with that same aggressive approach and, jump on you guys early and hold on late, man.
Hey, and to build on that, we're talking about a Cardinals defense that was last in the league last year from PFF grades, 32nd. We all know that Josh Allen, the key to that Bills offense. How does this group get after him? Do they bring anybody in this offseason? How do you feel that this group matches up against the Bills defensively? And what's their answer to get that rush and get after Josh Allen on Sunday?
I think more than anything, Jerry, is going to have to be scheme, because we don't have, they're doing it kind of internally. We're trying to grow this organization. Has not gone out and spent money on any big time free agents over the last 2 seasons that they've, been in charge here. We've done pretty well in the draft in terms of trying to plug some holes, but we chopped the fat off both sides of the ball. We got lean in terms of anybody who had a name and a contract out here. We got rid of them, and we haven't been going out and spending a whole bunch of money. So with that being said, it's going to have to be a scheme thing, because we don't have if you look up and down our roster, other than Budda Baker at the back end of it defensively, you have to actually pull out the program to see who we have on this roster. Where'd he go to school? And how long has he been in the league? That type of thing. But, if we can put a plan together, the one thing I will say is, regardless of how many or lack thereof big names we have, what you will find, and you mentioned earlier, a team they're not going to quit on you. Gannon's got these guys playing hard from the first whistle to the last. So, you're going to have to be prepared for a fight till the end. It's just a matter of, do we have enough to threaten you or make you feel like, at any given point we could steal this game from you. I'm not going to say you guys are going to run all over us or pass all over us, because I don't know yet. But as far as, the attack, it's going to have to be a pretty inventive scheme on both sides to keep us in this game more than anything.
All right. He's Ed Smith. He's one half of the Believe in Arizona Cardinals vidcast podcast. Check those guys out over on the Believe Network, him and Javon Adams. Ed, man, I appreciate you. Thanks for coming on. Hopefully we get together soon. And, man, Good luck this weekend.
Absolutely, Jerry. Appreciate you, brother, and look forward to being in touch soon. Thanks, man.
All right, man. We'll see you later. He's Ed Smith. He's with the Believe Network, and he covers the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to try to bring you a guest every week here on the Big O Show, and we'll try to bring on a guy that comes in and talks about this week's opponent. But again, real fast before we get out of here, I know we got a football game getting ready to kick off, the first game of the season, Chiefs versus Ravens. And remember, that game was delayed because of lightning and thunderstorms. My keys to the game: how does Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. have an impact on the Bills' defense? Can the Bills stop the run with minimal guys in the box? Because you know that Marvin Harrison is going to command attention. The other receivers getting guys out of the box in coverage with multiple receiver sets. How do those guys, influence the Bills' defense? Can they stop the run with minimal guys in the box? My second key to the game is the Bills' front seven versus that Arizona offensive line. I think we have an advantage there. I think Ed Oliver has an advantage. Terrell Bernard on splash plays, getting downhill, slashing and cutting. How does our defensive front seven match against that Arizona OL? I think pretty well. That's going to have to be a big key for the Bills to win this game. Then we got Arizona's defense versus Josh Allen. Ed and I just discussed that. Your guess is as good as mine. We'll find out what the Cardinals did in the offseason, but I also like that matchup as well. Anytime 17 takes snaps, I feel really good about it. So those are my keys to the game, and let's look at a real quick prediction. I do think the over-under is in jeopardy, folks. It's 47 points. I think we'll have some issues maybe a little bit with James Conner and some of that running game of the Cardinals, along with Kyler Murray and his scramble ability. I think that's a word. And maybe have some issues with it before we settle down. And when I look at this game, I think the Bills come out on top 35-27. So I see the Bills 1-0 after this one, heading into a Thursday night matchup with the Miami Dolphins, and that one on the road. But again, folks, thanks for watching the show today. The Big O Show here on the Overreaction Buffalo Network, powered by Believe. Check our website out at overreactionbuffalo.com. You can hit us on, you can hit the podcast up tomorrow if you want to listen to this show on podcast form, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, all the podcast providers. We are on there. You can listen on the podcast as well. And then also, man, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get us to 2,000. Let's see how many likes we can get for this episode. And as always, folks, I appreciate you. Thanks for spending the time today to watch the Big O Show. And we'll be back next week right here Thursday night, 8 Eastern, 7 Central on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. I'm the Big O, Jerry Ostroski. As always, folks, much love. Go Bills.
I'm still the same.